A silver denarius spins through the air, flashing in the sunlight before landing heavily on a map stained with fresh blood. On the coin's face, a raging bull, the symbol of Italy, is depicted trampling a she-wolf, the sacred mother of Rome. The image is shattered by the dull, wet thud of a heavy pilum piercing a wooden shield, followed instantly by the silence of a stunned crowd. In 91 BCE, the Roman Republic faced the deadliest army in its entire history. This enemy did not march from Carthage, nor did it descend from the frozen Alps of Gaul. It was an army that spoke Latin, wore Roman armor, and organized itself into manipular formations identical to the legions. It was an army of Rome's own allies, the very men who had conquered the Mediterranean for the Senate. This was not a war for territory or gold, and it was a savage struggle for identity, a civil war before the name existed, where to survive, Rome would have to lose the one thing it held most dear: its exclusivity. Welcome back to World Chronicles. Today we uncover the Bellum Sociale, the social war, the conflict that Rome technically won on the battlefield, but which destroyed the soul of the Republic forever. For centuries, the Roman war machine had a silent engine that the Senate rarely acknowledged. In the legendary legions that crushed Carthage and conquered Macedon, for every Roman citizen standing in the battle line, there was an Italian ally, or socius, standing next to him. These men from Samnium, Marsi, and Etruria provided nearly half of the Republic's military manpower and twice its cavalry. They bled the same red blood on foreign soil, endured the same forced marches, and died under the same sun. Yet, when the wars ended and the spoils were counted, the gold flowed only into the coffers of Rome. The Italians returned home not as heroes, but as subjects, living under a legal system that treated them with contempt. The humiliation was not just political, it was personal and physical. In the Italian countryside, a Roman magistrate, traveling through a village, could order the local noble, a man who might have commanded cavalry in a glorious campaign, to be stripped and whipped in the public square, simply because the village bathhouse was not heated quickly enough for the Romans' pleasure. The sound of the lash cracking against the back of a veteran ally became the defining sound of the era, echoing louder than any decree from the Senate. To make matters worse, the failed land reforms of the Gracchi brothers, intended to help the Roman poor, had inadvertently threatened the Italian aristocracy by reclaiming public lands they had farmed for generations. Squeezed between a jealous Roman mob and an arrogant Senate, the Italian elites realized they were trapped. They did not initially want to destroy Rome. They wanted to become Rome. They demanded civitas, full citizenship, and the legal protection it brought. They waited for a political solution, pinning their hopes on a single ambitious aristocrat in the Senate. But in the volatile atmosphere of the Republic, hope was a dangerous thing to hold. In 91 BCE, the fate of Italy rested on the shoulders of one man, the tribune of the plebs, Marcus Livius Drusus. Drusus was no radical firebrand. He was a blue-blooded aristocrat, wealthy and powerful, yet he possessed the foresight to see what the Senate refused to acknowledge: that the Republic could not survive by holding a sword to the throat of its own allies forever. He proposed the unthinkable: full Roman citizenship for the Italian people. To the Senate, this was a threat to their monopoly on power. To the Roman mob, it was a threat to their grain dole and entertainment. Drusus stood alone, trapped between a jealous city and a desperate peninsula. The tension broke, not with a vote, but with a blade. One evening, as Drusus was dismissing a crowd of clients in the atrium of his own home, a hidden assassin struck. The blow was precise and fatal. As the reformer collapsed, bleeding out on his own floor, he looked at those around him and gasped a final haunting question. Relatives and neighbors, will the Republic ever have another citizen like me? His death sent a clear message to the Allies. There would be no political solution. The path of law was closed. The path of war was now open. The response was immediate and terrifying. At the town of Asculum, during a religious festival, a visiting Roman official named Quintus Servilius sensed the simmering anger of the crowd. Instead of calming them, he stood in the theater and threatened the locals with the wrath of the Senate. It was the final insult. The crowd did not disperse. They surged forward. They tore Servilius to pieces in his seat, then barred the city gates and slaughtered every Roman citizen within the walls. The massacre at Asculum was not a riot. It was a declaration of independence written in blood. News of the slaughter traveled fast across the mountains. But the Italians did not just prepare for a punitive expedition. They did something Rome never expected. They built their own Rome. The rebels did not flee to the mountains to wage a guerrilla war. They founded a rival state. In a direct challenge to the Seven Hills on the Tiber, the Italian Confederacy chose the mountain fortress of Corfinium as their new capital, defiantly renaming it Italica. They struck their own silver coins, stamped not with the head of Roma, but with the image of the bull goring the wolf. They elected 2 consuls, Popedius Silo and Papius Mutilus, and appointed 12 praetors, creating a perfect shadowy reflection of the very republic they sought to destroy. But the true horror for the Senate lay not in the political structure, but on the battlefield, where Rome found itself facing 100,000 disciplined Italian veterans, men who had learned the art of war in Roman camps, arrayed against a hastily assembled Roman force of 90,000. It was a tactical nightmare, a mirror match of terrifying proportions. A Roman legionary staring across the field saw his own equipment, the same heavy scutum shield, the same short Spanish gladius, and the same deadly pilum. When the trumpet sounded the charge, the centurions on both sides recognized the specific calls for maneuver and envelopment, neutralizing the tactical advantage Rome had held over every other enemy for centuries. Rome was surrounded. To the north, the Marsi threatened the capital. To the south, the Samnites burned the rich fields of Campania. And leading the Roman defense was a man whose glory days were long past. Or so they thought. The northern front was a meat grinder, dominated by the Marsi, a people so ferocious that the Romans themselves had a proverb: "You can never triumph over the Marsi, nor without them." The Roman consul, Publius Rutilius Lupus, eager to prove himself, ignored this wisdom. On the banks of the Tolenus River, he saw what he thought was a retreating enemy and ordered a chaotic crossing. It was a fatal miscalculation. The Marsi had not fled. They were waiting in the reeds. As the legions floundered in the waist-deep water, the trap snapped shut. Arrows and javelins turned the river into a slaughterhouse, and Lupus himself was cut down, his body swept away by the current. Panic seized Rome. In desperation, the Senate handed command to the one man they feared almost as much as the enemy, Gaius Marius. But this was not the Marius of legend. At 67, he was overweight, short of breath, and limping from old wounds. Yet, while his body had aged, his strategic genius remained razor-sharp. He looked at the Marsi and knew that to fight them in a pitched battle was suicide. So, the old wolf did the unexpected. He refused to fight. Marius ordered his men to dig. He constructed a massive defensive trench system, forcing the impatient Marsi to waste their strength against earthen walls. When the enemy commander taunted him, shouting, "If you are a great general, Marius, come down and fight," Marius coolly replied, "If you are a great general, make me." He stabilized the front, not with a sword, but with a shovel, turning the northern campaign into a grueling stalemate. Marius held the line, but in the south, the legions were crumbling, and the war demanded a younger and hungrier predator to turn the tide. While Marius played the tortoise in the north, a different beast was unleashed in the south. Lucius Cornelius Sulla, a patrician with a terrifying reputation for both luck and ruthlessness, took command of the southern legions. He was the antithesis of the plodding Marius, a man of lightning speed and aristocratic arrogance who believed the gods themselves guided his hand. Sulla did not dig trenches. He hunted. His target was Rome's oldest and most hateful enemy, the Samnites. These mountain warriors had humiliated Rome at the Caudine Forks centuries ago, and now, under the general Lucius Cluentius, they threatened to cut the Republic in half. Sulla struck with a ferocity that stunned both friend and foe. At the siege of Pompeii, he didn't just break the Samnite lines, he shattered them. When Cluentius attempted a tactical retreat, Sulla refused to let him regroup. He chased the rebel army for miles, turning a withdrawal into a massacre. The fields of Campania were littered with 30,000 Samnite bodies, a testament to Sulla's doctrine of total war. It was here, amidst the smoke of burning camps, that his own soldiers bestowed upon him the ultimate honor, the corona graminia, or grass crown. Woven not from gold or laurel, but from the simple, blood-stained grass of the battlefield, it was the highest military decoration a Roman could receive, given only to a commander who had single-handedly saved an entire legion from destruction. Sulla wore it not with pride, but with the terrifying certainty of a man who knew he was destined to rule. Rome was winning on the battlefield, but it was losing the war of attrition. They needed a weapon sharper than a sword to break the Italian resolve. By late 90 BCE, the Senate faced a cold, hard truth.
Yes,
They could win every battle and still lose the war. The sheer number of rebels was inexhaustible, and the economy was collapsing under the strain of fielding over a dozen legions. Rome needed a victory, but the sword was too blunt an instrument to achieve it. The solution came not from a general, but from a consul named Lucius Julius Caesar, a distant relative of the man who would one day cross the Rubicon. He proposed the Lex Julia, a law that offered full Roman citizenship to any Italian community that had not revolted, or to any rebel who laid down his arms immediately. It was a masterstroke of political strategy. In a single stroke, the Lex Julia stripped the rebellion of its moral cause. Was why fight and die for rights that Rome was now offering for free? The effect was immediate and devastating to the rebel cause. The Great Coalition fractured. The Etruscans and Umbrians, who fought only for equality, accepted the offer and went home. The war transformed overnight from a massive struggle for independence into a brutal police action against the diehards. Rome had admitted defeat in principle to secure victory in reality. The sound of the war changed. The clash of shields was replaced by the frantic scratching of styluses on bronze tablets, recording the names of thousands of new citizens. The moderates went home, but the extremists, the Samnites, had too much old blood on their hands to surrender. Sulla was coming for them. Asculum, the city where the first Roman blood was spilled, became the tomb of the Italian dream. In 89 BCE, Gnaeus Pompeius Strabo, father of Pompey the Great, laid siege to the rebel capital with a brutality that shocked even the hardened veterans of the social war. He did not just starve the defenders, he broke them. When the city finally fell, the leaders of the rebellion, realizing that Roman justice would mean a slow, agonizing death in the Forum, committed mass suicide.
Free Italy.
They poisoned themselves at a final banquet, toasting to a free Italy that would never exist. The capture of Asculum marked the end of organized resistance, but for the Samnites, the war was far from over. Driven into the mountains, the Samnites fought on with the desperation of men who knew they were already dead. It was Sulla who hunted them down, burning their villages and executing their leaders with a cold, terrifying efficiency. But as the legions cheered his name, a darker reality began to take shape. The Senate had given Sulla imperium, absolute command, to save the Republic. But in doing so, they had created a monster they could no longer control. Sulla's soldiers looked to him, not the laws of Rome, for their pay and their future. The Italians were now citizens. The external war was over, but the weapons were not put away. They were just turned inward. The social war ended, not with a treaty, but with a transformation that forever altered the map of the Mediterranean. The Italians had lost on the battlefield, but they had won the peace. Within a few short years, the distinction between Roman and Ally vanished. The entire peninsula south of the Po River was united under a single citizenship, a single law, and a single language. Rome was no longer just a city-state on the Tiber. It was Italy. But the republic that the Italians fought so hard to join was already dying, poisoned by the very victory that saved it. The war had forged a new kind of Roman army, professional, battle-hardened, and dangerously loyal not to the Senate, but to the generals who paid their wages and guaranteed their retirement. The legions that had crushed the Samnites now looked to Sulla as their patron, their provider, and their god. In 88 BCE, when the Senate attempted to strip Sulla of his command in the east, he did what no Roman commander had ever dared to do. He did not step down. He turned his army around and marched on Rome. The social war had taught him that power grew from the point of a gladius, not from the debate of the forum. And as Sulla's troops crossed the sacred boundary of the city, the Pomerium, the Republic effectively died, replaced by the rule of the strongest. The social war created the Roman Empire, but it killed Roman liberty. Please subscribe to our channel to relive the heroic and tragic chapters of history with us as we follow Sulla's march into the heart of Rome.